mighty, you best beware.
All right. That song has nothing to do with the title, but it was the closest thing I had. What's up, nerds? It's your boy, the OGGM, coming to you from Site B at 9:21 in the morning on this, the 26th day of August 2025. It is 66 degrees and hazy, cold and foggy here at Site B. How are you? We're taking a look at another game from that amazing Humble Bumble. 57 games for $40. And we're taking a look at Fantasy Roleplay Warhammer from our good friends at Games Workshop. For many of us, this was the very first grim, dark, European-style game that we encountered. At least it was for me. It takes all the stuff we know and love about fantasy roleplay, went across the pond over to Europe and Germany and Russia and all sorts of other dark, grim European places, and adopted a much more dark, realistic style, completely different system than we were used to. And then it came back over here to the States and was very, very popular for a long time. Then it wasn't, then it was, then it wasn't. Obviously, more people are familiar with the miniature wargaming side of Warhammer than the role-playing gaming side, but it does have a very large, dedicated community. There are a lot of amazing ideas in this game, at least as I remember. So still in print. I think it's on its 30th version. Games Workshop does love to reprint their stuff so they can change their rules. Every Games Workshop person I know says that's the main complaint they have. The minute I finished my army, they changed the rules, and now I got to remake my army. I can't play my Tau anymore. Whatever. This is the source of the Skaven, which became my version of kobolds. We've got the squints and the orcs and the Nurgle, and just so much chaos and fun. So let's take a look at the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. Also, this game doesn't really have classes per se. It has professions, which is a great idea. And a lot of other games have adopted this. Of course, it also has the Dwarven Troll Slayer, which is another great idea. It does have a little bit more of a techno feel, say. Here we got a giant Skaven. Here we got a much more smaller Skaven. And of course, you have the whole thing with the chaos stuff. So look at them, Skaven. Yay, kobolds. These are my kobolds. Skavens are my kobolds in my world. Now, this is a big hunka burning love of a role-playing game. I believe we're into... I remember it was like $75 when it first came out, when I first saw it. 346 pages. It was a big dictionary of rules and stuff. And yet, despite all that, it was very easy to make characters and really easy to get into the world. You know, whenever we played, we usually had characters ready within 5-10 minutes, sometimes less. We were playing, within an hour, and we were usually dead by the end of the first hour of play. But, it was so much fun. It's definitely different. So let's see. We got the typical how to play the game stuff, blah, 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 blah. Look, art before AI. Then we go into, look, Dwarven Troll Slayer, Gortek and Felix, if you're familiar with the books. You can see the art style is completely different than what you might associate typically with fantasy. We got guys dressed up like Puritans, and we got a much more, I don't want to say French Romanticism, but Regency era or early Regency era style to the look, as opposed to what you might expect from normal fantasy. There's a very different look, a very different feel about the world. You can just see with all the grim, dark stuff to it. Go away. Maybe too much art, guys. So, Dwarven Troll Slayer, normal dwarf. I played a Dwarven Troll Slayer. I played a human pit fighter. I played a human rat catcher. I don't remember what else I played, but those are the ones I do remember. Here's some Chaos Beastmen. Some more world building. Again, you can see the influence and the style is much later. Middle Ages, early Renaissance type style. More of the history of the world. Lady. I don't think this is AI, but this picture is interesting. I don't know if the... it doesn't seem right. How small he made these people. But I guess it's a good way to show distance. Hey, get off my roof. That individual would probably fall through the roof. So, you know, again, whoever did this art really likes the Dwarven Troll Slayer, or there's a whole story going on in the art. Could be that. Could be a story going on in the art. There's a death priest. So again, you can see the style is different. Later, again, you know, the more, Spanish piracy, age of piracy, post Reformation. You can see the whole thing about, the pinning the pieces of paper from the holy text to their bodies to protect them kind of thing. So it does seem that this is a story. I should probably be reading it, but, to get you used to the world, which is a good way to introduce you to the world, to tell you a story. Maybe, by my standards of today, this is too much for me, but I understand what they're going for. And for this kind of world, it does, because it's so deep in the lore and the style and the flavor. And for a lot of us used to American style role playing, this was so different that I could see why you would need this much lore to really impact you with how different this game is from what you were used to, say, in the 80s when I first saw it. I don't know a lot of people who have said, oh yeah, this is my first game. I know a few who've told me over the years, oh, I never played D&D first. We started with Warhammer. And usually they meant the miniature game and then the role-playing game later. But yeah, I do know a few people, but if you were to like percentage-wise worldwide, especially here in the US, yeah, no. I mean, I didn't even know about it until 1985, 86 is when I first played it. So you have your species: human, halfling, dwarf, high elf, wood elf. Today I would say this is too much information for me. But I understand why they make the choices that they did back then. So the differences of the races and how each race looks at each the other races, that's kind of fun. Then we have the careers and whether you can be that career or not, and you can randomly roll to see which one you are. So we've got the academic types. We've got the burghers: agitator, ardent beggar, investigator, merchant, ranch catcher, townman, watchman. I guess those are just normal people. Courtiers and peasants. So you notice there's no really warrior on here. I guess noble servants by warden. Yeah, I guess villager is the closest thing to just normal dude. Weird. And then the description. Oh, there's more. Here we go. There's a whole second page. Rangers, your folks, warriors. Kid with spear. Kid with spear. So kid with spear would be a human soldier. So here we have a barber. Like I said, there's no classes. There's professions, and each profession has a little special thingy, and maybe stuff you start with, and a reason to adventure. So some of you might be familiar with like the funnel style of role play, where you start with 0 level characters who aren't members of a class but have a job. You're not Wilhelm the fighter, you're Wilhelm the barber, and for every reason you're dealing with weird stuff, but you don't have access to swords and spells and armor. But what do you have access to as a barber? Well, I've got access to my razor and whatever's in my barber shop that I could use. And then, so yeah, it does a much more like a feel of, your normal dudes who are just thrown into abnormal situations and doing the best you can. And as you progress, you start to become more and more of a heroic archetype, and Wilhelm the Barber might someday become Wilhelm the Rogue or Wilhelm the Warrior. But, he started as Wilhelm the Barber. Here are characteristics and how to make them, attribute tables and stuff like that. Your stats were weapon skill, ballistic skill, strength, toughness, initiative, agility, dexterity, intelligence, willpower, fellowship, charisma. And then you have your secondary stats like wounds, your fate points, your resilient points, and other stuff. So yeah, making weapon skill and ballistic skill as a stat. Part of me thinks, yeah, because I might really, really suck with being agile, but I might have an innate knack with a bow, right? Like when I was doing archery in college, you were doing archery in college? Yeah, I was doing archery in college for a minute and a half. I was actually got pretty decent. But my normal hand-eye coordination and strength sucked, but yeah. So I guess I could see why you would make that a stat. Most other role-playing games would say that's a substat of strength or whatever, but this one went like, no, you might be really, really skilled with X, but that doesn't mean you're necessarily Y. The world's greatest swordsman doesn't necessarily have to be super strong, right? Skills and talents and what they mean, the usual stuff. Ones that are specific to each race, picking up your trappings, the stuff that you would start with. So, kid with spear would start with clothing, hand weapon, dagger, and a pouch because he's a warrior type. And then there's other things that might go with your career. You'd have to check each career to see if something free came with it. Starting money, coming up with your name, an elf name generator. Anybody ever hear the theory that the best way to find names for elves is just to look at the back of a food and look at the ingredients? Essence of rosin. That sounds vaguely elvish. Just have to, change a little wording, but yeah. Look how in depth they go into character building. Yeah, this is not a OSR quick get it done 15-page role-playing game. This is deep lore. It's early life paths, bringing the characters to life, how to advance, what you get for advancing. Here's the character record sheet. The back of the character record sheet. Here's our career and classes. I know. This is like 1980s. I think we're looking at pre-AI art, but this version might have some AI art in it. I don't know when this one was printed. On page 46. So what version is this? Does it say when this version was made? So D is the 4th edition, 2018. Might have some AI in it. How to improve your characteristics, how to improve your skills, how to improve all the improvement. And again, it just shows the deep aspects of the game that it really gets into, all these different things that most other role-playing games just brush through. For most other role-playing games, advancement would be one page, but this one is much more deep into each step of the advancement, because again, you're not playing Wilhelm the Warrior, you're playing Wilhelm the normal dude who just happens to have been thrown into abnormal situations, and for whatever reason takes it upon themselves to follow up on this path, and then they somehow become, a heroic adventurer. So here's an example career path. We've got apothecary, a person who makes perfumes and waxes and love potions and stuff like that. Not necessarily would ever need to go on an adventure, but then something happens and they decide to go on an adventure. But this is how they start out, right? And then they can go up one, stuff like that, and they get more skills and stuff like that. See, here's a lawyer. Why would a lawyer go into a dungeon? And a lawyer has no reason to go in a dungeon, but obviously a series of events happens that leads our poor lawyer into a dungeon. Again, you can see the time period expressed in the art style. It's obviously much later than typical fantasy. Much more closely related to yes, nuns did dress like that. Here we got a stitcher, I've got my string and my needle and stuff, and I'm going to stitch you up. What am I doing in a dungeon? Don't know. Here we got our priest, and the religions in this world are very weird. And one thing that this world did in this art style is always they're always got a piece of the Holy Writ stapled to their body or whatever. I don't know where that comes from. I know during the Crusades, sometimes, you would wear a holy relic. I'm sure it's based upon something, but for the life of me, I can't think of any time through my study of history or, artwork or stuff like that, where the whole take a piece of the holy text and put it on your body thing, or why you would do that, especially in this time period where one decent rainstorm and, well, there goes that thing. I hope it wasn't important. So, I'm always curious about that. If anybody knows where that came from and why. We have a scholar. I'm just, okay, this thing with the candle on the head, 80% that actually probably existed in some form. They made a lot of weird shit back then. Stuff we would look at today and go why? Here we have a wizard. So, yeah, obviously this guy would be adventuring. This is a wizard. But here we have a rabble rouser, an agitator. An agitator is basically somebody who, gets up on the soapbox and complains about something. Here we have an artist. I'm Susan, the dwarven blacksmith. Why am I adventuring? I have no reason to adventure. I'm perfectly. Something happens and I have to go adventuring. And just the amount of in-depth detail, each page dedicated to the character, but only one page per character. So still everything you need to know. So just different characters, and just here I played a rat catcher. Okay, so just more of the artwork, more of the different character types. And again, you can just see the research of the actual professions that existed back then and the actual people of what it might be like to be a miner or whatever in that time period. I'm a chicken, huh? Witch hunter. So now we're looking at the 14th century, 15th century, early 16th century, age of piracy, tail end of the age of piracy, the Dutch East Indian, that whole period of time, that mystical, fantasy medieval. When we think of medieval has come to an end. The Renaissance is come and gone. We're moving into the age of expansion, the age of discovery. The world is round, not flat. Stuff like that, and it's reflected in the artwork. 1492, stuff like that. I've got a wooden sword. Dwarven Troll Slayer, yes. Great class, great idea. No two use the same style to make their mohawks. They all have their own specific recipe for the beard oil and the mohawk oil. A dwarf that did something so embarrassing that they have decided that the only way they can make up for what they've done is to seek out the most heroic, glorious death. Die a glorious death with steel in your hands. It's the only way to make up for what you've done. And then here he is, kid with spear. Well, kid with halberd, but okay, yeah, there's a boy. There's a character. I'm a human. I have a spear. I'm doing my job. I get 2 silvers a week or whatever, and then I'm going to go home. And oh, look, I have to leave town because the orcs are invading. And where's my life going to take me? And then just all the skill system and what each skill does and how you can improve each skill and examples. Love to see examples as long as it doesn't take up too much space. By my standards today, again, this is way too much space wasted. But it was a different time, and it's a different style than we're used to. It's a much more languid. Is that a word? Languid? A much more in-depth style of storytelling, where it's not a quick, fast world. It's a dangerous world. Obviously, not only do we have monsters and goblins and stuff, but the ever-present growth of chaos and corruption and stuff like that. And it's just a different feel. That's the great thing about this world and this style of game, is it brought this darker, grimmer, more atmospheric style of play. And for many people, it's like, oh yeah, I finally get it. And for other people are like, no, whatever. But the whole argument over how we used to play in the old days, it's probably closer to this. And this dark. How many times am I going to say dark grim? 23 minutes. We haven't even got to the good stuff yet. So look at it. This is just the skill system and the art. And again, so many skills and so much detailed skills, because it's not, a class level based. You're not Sven the rogue. You're this person. And you have things and skills and talents and archetypes and a life that happened before you went adventuring for whatever reason that you went adventuring. Why are you adventuring? You had a perfectly good life. Rules. There's a squib. What are those called? Squibs? Yeah. Goblins writing squibs. Success, failure, difficulty, chaos influence, taking 10, all that stuff. Combat summary, turns, initiative. We're on page 158. Finally got into the combat. Is that too much wasted space? Maybe. 400 pages does seem a lot for one book. But for a lot of us, this was the first time we saw an entire game in a book. We were used to the game being 2 books or 3 books or sometimes even 4 books, And these guys went, nah, we can put it all in one book. What does that person have on their head? Looks like a pot. I know what it's supposed to be, but it looks like it's a pot. And again, there's the piece of paper, the Holy Writ. Where did that come from? That's got to be a thing. It's got to be based on some art or something they saw. Amazing art. Just So just look at this. I mean, this makes you want to play this world, to play this game. And for, again, this was a lot of us, this was the first exposure to this style. It's such a deep world and so much research and so much lore and so much love and so much life, and just trying to adopt that grim, dark, realistic Black Company style where, these things all matter to this system. Here we have a little chaos mutation right here. Gotta have the chaos. Diseases, the Black Plague, the pox, stuff like that. You died of dysentery. Psychology, fear, prejudice, terror, phobias, what you do between adventuring. When do we get to the fun stuff? Rewards. Always something going on in town, the section of belief, including our boy Sigmar, the cults, the chaos cults, the gods of the empire, the old gods, the chaos gods. The elven gods. The chaos, yes, chaos, Nurgle. And we're on page 223 and we're still not done. Look at all these different spells, the magic system and how magic works. And the cleric-y magic system, the different types of magic, lore of life, lore of heaven, lore of shadows, lore of light, lore of metal, lore of death, lore of fire, our favorite, lore of beasts, elven magic, ingredients for magic, the cost of magic, the types of spells available, messing around with magic and how it's dangerous because of all the chaos. You peel back the layers of the world to look at the world inside the world, and sometimes it looks back at you and it's not always fun, and usually it's very corrupting. Just more magic, more, maybe too much. But again, just detail. Flavor. Understand that this is not Dungeons and Dragons. This is not what you're used to. This is a different style of play. Oh, look at that picture. It's so evocative, Part of you just wants to seep into the beauty of this world. I mean, that's beautiful. It's also frightening, but it's beautiful. It's just a different time, that the epic fairy tale fantasy never-ending forest. Babes in the wood. You just want to seep into this world. But you also another part of you is like, I never want to have anything to do with this place because it's awful. I've read enough history. I'm not seeing is pictures of monsters. Here's some more world building, what the world is like. 269. 69, dude. Look at this. This little shack on the water. I love that. Timeline. More world building. Politics. Politics is important in this style of world and this style of play. Just like politics was important in the real world during this time period. It's very much deeply ingrained in things that actually happened in the world during this time period, but then also adding the fantasy elements. There were still, things beyond the edge of the map. shopping and treasure, stuff like that. You're not going to find a lot of potions of healing in this world. This is much more of a game about, I found some pots, I found some things, I found some weapons. What can I get for them? All sorts of weapons, all sorts of armor. I'm not seeing any monsters. Where do we get to the monsters? Let's see some monsters, please. There we go. Beastery. Here we go. This is what we want to see. Humans, dwarves, halflings, elves, ogres. Ah, look at me. I'm an ogre. Brigands. Bear, boar, normal things, dogs, giant rats, giant spiders, horses, pigeons, snakes, wolves, basilisks, bog octopus. There he is, a squig. They're so cute. I don't know why these things are so cute. Dragons. Yes, there are a dragon in this world. Some fen beasts. Reptile people. Giants. Griffins. Hippogriffs. Hail Hydra. Some type of chaos monster. Manticores. Pegasi. Trolls. Nasty, horrible things. Wyverns. There's our orcs. Our goblins. How you doing? Our snotlings. Yay, snotlings. Kobolds. We've got our undead. Different types of undead. Even some vampires. Then we got the Chaos Beastmen and all their, various incarnations. We got the mutants, Chaos Mutant, Chaos Cultants, Chaos Warriors, the Bloodletters of Khorne, the Demon Princess, and the Ratman. Yay! Skaven, my version of the kobolds. I love these guys. They're my favorite bad guys in Warhammer so much that I made them my kobolds in my D&D game. And then just more on if you want to build your own monster. And that's it. Oh my God. Just wow. So much stuff. 350 some odd pages. Amazing artwork. Amazing world building. I think it's percentile based. I don't even remember because we were just looking so much. I couldn't tell you anything about the actual game or how to play, but I think it's point based to make a character, and then percentiles for the stats, right? Is it percentile? Oh yeah, it's percentile. So what can we say about the system that I haven't just spent a ton of time saying about it, other than it's an amazing, deep. I mean, the world building alone is, it's a masterclass, and the amount of research and the amount of time and energy that they spent to make this game feel completely different than anything that we'd seen up to then in the Dungeons and Dragons world, especially here in the States. Obviously, games evolve differently overseas. Games evolve differently in different countries. Games evolve differently in Europe and Germany and London and, Scotland and Ireland. And the community evolved differently than it did here. Just like the gaming on the West Coast was different than gaming in the Central of America, which was different than the East Coast style of gaming. And each community brings its culture, its personality, its history to the game. And obviously Europe, so much history, to mine creativity and to take these moments from actual history of that part of the world and say, okay, we're doing, the age of piracy, the 14th, 15th, 16th century, the age of the Holy Roman Empire, the Spanish Inquisition, the plagues, the Puritans, colonization of America, that whole time period. But then we're also adding a little magic, a little chaos, a little dark fairy tale, plagues and stuff like that. But we're making everything a little bit worse, a little bit darker, a little bit why are you leaving the safety of town, the safety of these cities, to go out into the wilderness, to risk life against the dark, because you're not prepared. You're a normal dude. You're a cook. You're a scholar. You're a butcher. You're a housemaid. Here is 101 reasons why you should never leave the safety of town. There's enough things in town that want to kill you. And then here's the overarching reason for you feel you have to leave and go adventure, that you're the only one who can. For whatever reason, you're a victim of circumstance. Maybe you are actively, it's just different. It's unique. It's not for everybody, There's plenty of people who don't like the style of game. It's too much work. It's too much investment. It's too deep. It's too dark. It's too antithesis to what we're used to with level-based, quick, fast style. It was a much more slower style, a much more invested in the storytelling style. Again, darker style of play. And it's, then it died out late 80s, early 90s. And then it started becoming popular again. And I guess now grim dark is really popular, but people still prefer a much more simple version. Like if you gave somebody a choice, Warhammer Fantasy or Shadowdark, I think most people would go Shadowdark, even though they would be looking for the same. It's like, yeah, let's do the Warhammer Fantasy stuff, but using Shadowdark, because I love the world. I love the art. I love the flavor. But I don't want to deal with the 37,000 pages of rules and background and flavor. I want that quickness. Like, was there a way to present this game without it being 400 pages and almost $100 to buy? And there probably was, but then it wouldn't have been Warhammer. It just would have been another D&D clone, another fantasy game in a stack of fantasy games, in a world filled with fantasy games and science fiction games. But it had to stand out. It had to be different. And in order to be different, it had to show us this different way of telling the same story during a different time period, and how that world was real, basing it in a real world as opposed to completely fantastical, and then saying, okay, but also. And for a lot of people love that style of game. And yeah, it's definitely fun. It's definitely different. I mean, there's nothing innately wrong with this game. I can't say, oh, don't play this game because it's stupid, or, it had the author hasn't changed a single thing in 8 months, or, no, there's technically nothing wrong with this system. I mean, there's some, some of the math breaks down in some places. It does get a little clunky, definitely in moments, and yeah, again, basically it's a different style, and it's a style that's not for everybody. So there are some who love the mindset of this game, but there are a lot of people who don't, because it is different and it takes a lot longer, and there's a much better chance of something horrible happening to your character. And if you just spent almost an hour making a character, as opposed to the 10 minutes it would take you to have made a Shadowdark character, and then that character dies, you're like, I don't want to play this game. I don't know. It's not for everybody, but yeah, it's just a masterpiece in some ways. And it's so influential. So many other games looked at this game much the same way some of the other games look at D&D and go, I want to do X. So many other games that came after this looked at this and either took the same thing and went with it tongue-in-cheek, i.e. Dungeon Crawl Classic, or looked at it and went, yes, I want to tell that story and I want that world, but I don't want it so complicated, but just the world building and the storytelling and the idea. Probably the worst thing about this idea, is that you are just a person. You're Steven, the leather tanner, Why is Stephen the leather tanner risking life and limb to leave the safety of town, knowing full well that town is pretty dangerous on its own? So yeah. All right, that's what I think about it. Let me know if you agree, disagree. If you haven't had a chance to pick this up yet, it's probably available still on drive-thru. You can use my link down below. Please let me know what you think. If you want these to continue, these reviews, because I still got like 40 some odd more of these games to go. Please like, please share, please subscribe. Of course, please take a moment to consider supporting the OGGM adventures by using one of the links down below. You can support me by buying me a coffee through Ko-Fi. You can support me by using my Only Crits coupon to get yourself some set of amazing dice. You could head on over to drive-thru and buy either one of the works I have available on drive-thru, both marked down to $6 from $20. Both amazing takes on Shadowdark. We've got Shadowdark Superheroes and Shadowdark Post-Apocalypse. But probably the best way you can support me is to like, share, and subscribe. And of course, have a great day. Now, here's that song again, which is completely inappropriate, but it's also the closest song I have.
Goblins, space goblins, we're goblins, space goblins. Break through the stars, we're small and green. Don't need a cloak to go unseen. We mine the rocks, space gnomes don't dare. Small but mighty, you best beware.